Testing 1 1. Testing. Testing 1 2. Testing. Testing 1 3. Testing. Testing 1 4. Testing. Testing 1 5. Testing. Testing 2 1. Testing. Testing 2 2. Testing. Testing 2 3. Testing. Testing 2 4. Testing. Testing 2 5. Testing. Testing 3 1. Testing. Testing. Testing 1 8. Testing 1 8. Okay. Testing 3 2. Testing.
Don't look
Testing.
ahead.
Testing 2 8. Okay.
Thank you all for coming. We've got a quorum, and we'll get started. I'm informed of no citizens wishing to address the committee. So with that, we will move on to our minutes of the last meeting, May 3rd, 2018. It's been a while. Anybody have any comments or questions on the minutes? All right, a motion to approve and a second from Dorothy. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. That motion carries. And with that, Angie. I haven't seen Angie yet. She's back here somewhere.
She is. Angie Morgan.
Hi, Angie. How you doing? It's okay. We're not waiting on you. Come on up. Angie's going to talk about the emergency department expansion contract selection. Welcome.
Yes, sir. So today we have before you consideration for Hutcherson Construction to do the construction work and build out on the ED expansion. If y'all will remember, when we did the east expansion, the IR over at the pavilion, we purposely built a shell space underneath on the first floor contiguous to the ED to build out for future expansion. So if we can have the next slide, we brought you a few little slides to, Derek was going to help me out, and there it is. So if you see shell space, that's where we're going to be building. That's the ED first floor of the pavilion. If we can get the next slide, it's filled in. There it is. It's 12 treatment rooms, all the associated support spaces. There's a little fast track type area. There's behavioral health treatment room. We got everything in there that we could get, so we're really proud of that. And it also has a little cut through to the ED, so it's all like one big unit. And the next slide, that's just a rendering, and that's what we'll be building. I think it's pretty nice, but as y'all know, Hutcherson Construction has done some work for us in the past. We went out for bid. We had 20 people at our pre-bid, 20 different contractors, which was huge. We had 16 general contractors that turned in an intent to bid, but on bid day we had 2. So that was disappointing, but not surprising with construction in the Metroplex still being so busy. We are recommending Hutcherson. They have a lot of healthcare experience, not only at JPS, but Arlington Memorial, HCA, THR Methodist, just lots of projects all over the Metroplex, and we're really comfortable with them. Their competitor, Northridge, which was a little bit higher, they have limited hospital experience. They're a 2.5-year-old company. I hope they continue to build maybe on some medical office building type work, clinic work, and get their foot in the door for construction. But I would like to ask for approval of Hutcherson Construction today.
But before we go to that approval, I want y'all to notice that there is a look to this rendering, and it may not be exact, but this rendering can give you an idea when you've gone up, when y'all took the tour of our new invasive labs. It's sort of that same sort of concept and look that we want. Steve, this will be helpful for you to look at because it's a significant difference from the days at JPS where we've made it look a lot different, and also we've lost the brown tile and or carpeting in the middle of the brown tile. So I think we've gone a long way. The other thing is we're trying to be as conducive as we can to make sure that nurse's station can see as many of those rooms as possible.
Correct.
It's nice to have privacy, and we need that, but we also need to be conscientious of the support team being able to monitor those rooms and see what's going on in those rooms. So we're going to try to make it so that it has the proper flow to it. But this is the look that you're going to see a lot from the new space at JPS. And should we have an opportunity in the future to do any expansion plans, you'll see something that will look very similar to this. And we have, Angie's done a great job of including the infectious disease control folks in and our quality team in to make sure what we've got. We've looked at the potential, even though we don't have an issue with ligature risk in this, we've looked at things that might stick out, might be a problem. We've tried to be really, really smart about how we design this for patient access, conducive to family members, and conducive to the flow of the patient base. And I think
also
it's really
geriatric friendly. I didn't say that, but it is.
It is. And we, y'all were kind enough to allow us, when we put the ED in, to have that extra space and that shelved-in space. And now it's time to utilize that because we are, of course, bursting at the seams And this will be something that we'll one day we'll expand upon this and expand upon this, but this is our attempt to use every option that we can for the inches that we need to make things work.
And finally, I would say he had a 180-day schedule, so that's reasonable and what we would expect. His minority participation was at 16%, but we have talked to him and reached out, and he's confident he can exceed our 25% goal. And so that's.
And Angie, help me on that one, because that is a contractor that has always met our MWBE requirement. So is it because of the stress of what he's doing on other projects?
Well, we talked to him about that, and he said ordinarily he has a certain subs that always bid with him, and there is just so much work going on that he did not get the sub bids that he normally does. Now, and he feels like he can pick it up. He may have to. He'll take a highest bidder is what he's going to do on one of his subcontractors to pull that participation rate up. But he felt confident he could do that, and I would trust him to do so.
Angie, do you know how many square feet approximately this is?
That's about 6,200 square feet.
How many beds did it?
12.
12?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
And you'll notice the sliding doors rather than the swing, and that was something particular that the staff asked for, and we were those are more expensive doors, of course, but we were able to accommodate that in the budget, just to save that floor space. You know, when you have a door swinging, you're using up floor space.
The other thing I think that's important in Angie's world is you want a contractor that does a good job. You don't want to just put yourself in the category of one contractor, but it is helpful for us that they have done medical construction.
Yes, sir.
Any contractor that you talk to, with all due respect, can say, I can build that.
Yes, sir.
And I realize that, but what some of our contractors who have worked with us before, we have a confidence level with, because it's worked out really good for our patients, and it's really good. And we don't have to go back and do a lot of retrofitting, and we don't have to do a lot of change orders, because they've built this very thing at other facilities in town. And it is helpful for us to have that, and for Angie to have that luxury of working with somebody who's built medical facilities.
Yes, sir.
Angie.
Yes, sir.
How many persons were at the pre-bid?
At the pre-bid, we had over 20 that were not our architects and not us. So I think it was about 28. So that we had a lot of interest in the project early on.
Yeah, I would say that in looking at the report, that even though Hutchinson did not reach that goal that we seek to have, their track record has shown that they've met that or exceeded it in other
Yes, they
projects.
have every time. Yes,
so
sir.
it makes me comfortable that they didn't try to go around the rule.
I guess we're presuming that once they get into the job and start working on it, as subs become available, they'll continue to strive to attain that 25%,
Yes, sir.
right? All right, any other questions for Angie? So will this have to go to finance?
Yes, sir.
As well?
Yes, sir.
All right, has it been to them yet?
No, sir.
Okay, so our recommendation today would take it on to finance.
Yes, sir.
We'd address the budgetary issues and all that. So if there's no other questions, we'd entertain a motion for Angie on this emergency department expansion.
So moved.
Dorothy? Have a motion and Ralph, second. Any questions for discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Angie, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Just get to work. All righty, Mr. Rule. Fort Worth Medical Innovation District update.
That sounds exciting, doesn't it?
It does
You know,
sound
in this
exciting.
committee, we
Explain
often
it.
talk about, just as we did in Angie's comments, what a fast-growing and vibrant community that we live in. And this committee really acknowledges and understands that JPS is, in addition to providing compassionate care, also is an economic driver, whether it's through our employment or our purchasing or our real estate development. And what we thought would be important today is, as this committee considers unique and original initiatives related to revenue diversification, real estate development, and employment in our community, that we have a briefing on the City of Fort Worth strategic plan, and specifically the Medical Innovation District. So with us today, we have Mike Brennan. Mike's the president of Near Southside, Inc., and Brenda Hicks Sorensen, the assistant director of economic development of the City of Fort Worth, to tell you a little bit about the Medical Innovation District.
Mike, Brenda, welcome.
Thanks for being here.
Thanks for coming today.
Thank
Appreciate you being here.
Thank you. Let's see if this clicker. Oh, it's this one.
And you just turn the mic off.
All right. Can everybody hear me okay? All right. It's an honor to be here speaking with the committee, and this has been a privilege to work on behalf of Near Southside Inc. with so many partners to kick off this effort, the Medical Innovation District effort. You can see from this slide that our role is really the convener of a discussion that's going to involve dozens of different players. And we have a range of entities involved. The major medical institutions are clearly among those that we need to work with closely. That's one end of the spectrum. And then the other end of the spectrum is an exciting, emerging entrepreneurial community in partnership often with the City of Fort Worth and with organizations like Tech Fort Worth that are creating new companies. And we're seeing that there is a concentration of healthcare-related companies that are coming out of entrepreneur efforts in Fort Worth. And so this was an outgrowth of the city's strategic plan, the economic development strategic plan, and Brenda will tell us more about that. Our role, like I said, is to convene this conversation. I'm privileged to serve as president of Near Southside Inc. We work in many different areas to revitalize this part of the city, and our work is really divided into development-related efforts where we are privileged to work with dozens of development partners, hundreds of development partners, to get good things built. And then on the advocacy side, promotional side, we're working to increase awareness of the district and to help the existing businesses and institutions that are here thrive and attract more. And that's at the heart of this effort, is to really fulfill those goals of creating a special place, special district that attracts that investment. We've been...
What you might want to do next time you have it up there is either make the JPS logo bigger.
Much larger. Much larger, yeah.
Coloring it would help you.
I will clearly have to tailor this based on the presentation.
We don't want anything special, just bigger.
Just larger. This has been, like I said, and like the center of the slide shows, this has been us working hand in hand with the City of Fort Worth. So to kick off the update, I'm going to hand off to Brenda.
Thank you, Mike, and thank you for the opportunity to be here. So as Mike indicated, this is really stemming from the City of Fort Worth Economic Development Strategic Plan. The key here is that while it's the City of Fort Worth Strategic Plan, it was never intended to be just for the city organization, not for economic development, not for the organization per se, but really what needs to happen for the City of Fort Worth to be that kind of globally competitive city, the 15th largest, what would you expect it to be, type city. So it really entails a lot of players, so to speak, a lot of partners, as Mike mentioned. So in even developing it, there were a number of stakeholders. So real briefly, just run through kind of the development of the strategic plan, really what it is, so that you get a picture of how this medical innovation district fits into also the broader context of the other goals and strategies within the plan. Had significant stakeholder engagement. I know a lot of folks in this room were engaged in some way, shape, or form, so we always appreciate that. A significant amount of data came out of it and was collected. We ended up with a 500-plus page document, so you don't get a document like that without a ton of information and data. And then we actually had a consulting team with 4 partners on it. TIP Strategies was the lead, and they do economic development plans, small business, a whole variety of things. But we also had JLL, who really focused on the competitiveness, the real estate component of it. Isaac Barkus is a gentleman who's in the investment capital, venture capital world, entrepreneurship, and so forth. So he was engaged in a lot of that activity, innovation, entrepreneurship. And then we had Fregonese and Associates, or Frego, as we called them, that really focused on land use and some of our demographic information and whatnot. So the plan is really broken up into 3 different segments. Competitiveness is exactly what you would expect it to be. How does Fort Worth compare in the metro? We are in the most competitive metropolitan district in the country when it comes to economic development activity. So how do we compare not just in the metro, but nationally and internationally? Also, then the second one is opportunity. So that really focuses on target industries and the labor market analysis. And then the third volume is really focused on what does this all mean, the strategic plan and specifically implementation. There's over 200 implementation strategies as part of this. Key findings, I don't think there's probably any surprises here. One of the fastest growing cities. This metro is a talent magnet. On the kind of unfortunate side, residential use has dominated our tax base. Here in the city of Fort Worth, 62% of our tax base is residential, 38 commercial. We really want that to be flipped for a healthy community, so that's one of our goals. The other interesting thing that I want to just highlight is the job housing balance is eroding. So right now we're at just over 2.06 jobs per household. The projections by 2040 were that we would be at 1.80 jobs per household. So that's a significant concern as we are looking at the community and the growth. So what do we need to do? Again, all of this is driving really what the recommendations were. So sector, target industries, no surprise here. Healthcare is one of our strong sectors, established sectors. Emerging opportunities, life science delivery, and innovation. Again, nothing I think that surprises anyone here. The vision is to compete successfully on the national and international stage for creative, high-growth businesses and the talented individuals who fuel them. So all 200 plus implementation strategies are really rolled into and focused on what basically implementing and achieving that vision. The framework, we have three main goals. We call these our 3 C's: establish Fort Worth's competitive edge. That's brand and image. The city of Fort Worth is 15th largest in a perception study. We were identified as the 45th largest. We have a perception issue. The good news is we don't have a negative perception. We're not competing and combating some of those negative perceptions some other cities might be experiencing. But the bad news is that nobody knows about us. We're not out there. So how do we compete on a competitive basis? Again, brand image, get that out there. That target industry, how do we really focus our attention on growing those opportunities within that? We can't be everything to everybody. So how do we really focus our efforts as a community to target opportunities where we can really grow? And focused on existing businesses, we need to do more to support our existing industries. And then, of course, workforce and industry partnerships. Under creative businesses, this is really the Medical Innovation District concept and efforts really dominate goal number 2. That plays a significant role in that and really drives the majority of the items within that. Also under there is entrepreneurship. So again, Mike said there's a pretty significant effort and a lot of activity going on there, but how do we continue to enhance that? Broader promotion of arts, and then really looking at a futures forum. So not just 10 years, but 40, 50 years, what needs to happen to be the community that everybody wants it to be. And then finally, the third goal is ensure community vitality. We have a lot of amazing areas and activities taking place across the city. We also have some areas that desperately need some assistance and help. How do we utilize those lessons learned and really expand and focus on those areas that could use assistance while continuing to emphasize and support those areas that are growing and going gangbusters and doing the things that we want them to do. And then also, how do we support businesses? Of course, all of this is great, but you need to implement and you need to focus on how do you measure success. So for us, there's a number of metrics under each of these, but it's really all about high-wage job growth, the sustainable tax base, creative industries and talented individuals, and quality of place. Again, there's actually about 24, 25 metrics within them. So really want to focus on the comparable innovation districts. Again, that was intended to just provide a really broad overview of the strategic plan. Now we're getting into kind of the heart of innovation districts. Oklahoma City Innovation District is one that we've been taking a look at a lot. This is a 1.3 square mile area. that encompasses both the Oklahoma Health Center and a commercial corridor of what's called Automobile Alley. They have over 18,000 people working in the area, which is almost 5% of Oklahoma City's employment base. Interestingly, they only have 1,200 people living in the district. So for them, a significant focus has really been on the placemaking. How do they get people to stay there, live there, and so forth? They have hired their first executive director. She started in July and are really just getting started. They have worked with Brookings Institute, which is one of the kind of premier organizations on innovation districts at this point in time. And right now they're working with another firm to really focus on placemaking. What's interesting when we talked to the folks in Oklahoma City, they actually kind of chuckled at us and thought that we're a little behind the 8 ball in the fact that they've already visited us here in Fort Worth and consider us an innovation district, and had really emphasized that we were so much further along than they are, and that we just needed to do a little bit better job of telling our story. So that's been an interesting message.
And the one, Oklahoma City.
Yes, sir.
Is that Brick City? Is that part of the
Bricktown?
Yes.
Is that part of this?
It's just outside.
It's just outside. Yeah, the Capitol is adjacent to it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and this was actually driven initially by healthcare. They since they had a pretty significant investment made in oil and gas, so they've since have expanded it. But there's a number of lessons learned here that we're looking at, even as they've just started on the governance side of things. As Mike said, entrepreneurship is a significant piece of innovation districts. They're having a heck of a time getting the entrepreneurs to locate there. And so we've had a number of significant conversations on understanding why they think that might be and what they're doing. Cortex is in St. Louis, and we're highlighting these, a number of these because of their either org structure. Some of them have research institutions, some do not. So there's various reasons why we've been looking at these. This one was established in 2002, so it's a little bit further along. And it is really led by Washington University, BJC Healthcare, the University of Missouri, St. Louis University and Missouri Botanical Gardens, so kind of an interesting mix of activity. Their focus is bioscience and technology research, development, and commercialization. They've completed or have under construction 1.7 million square feet of new and rehabilitated space, totaling over $550 million of investment and generating 4,200 technology-related jobs so far. They intend for this and anticipate when this is fully implemented that the master plan projects $2.3 billion in construction, over 4.5 million square feet of mixed-use development, research, office, clinical, and the like, a new Metrolink light rail station, and 15,000 permanent tech-related jobs. They currently have over 250 companies that call this home. Wake Forest Innovation Quarter, this is part of the Research Triangle in North Carolina. We, I think, are all familiar with Research Triangle in some way, shape, or form. This is one of the fastest growing urban-based districts for innovation in the United States. This is home to more than 170 companies, 5 leading academic institutions, and more than 3,700 workers, 1,800 degree-seeking students, and more than 8,000 workforce trainee participants at this point in time. Their focus on business and education is in biomedical science, information technology, digital media, clinical services, and advanced materials, so a little bit broader than some of the other ones. Currently, they have 1.9 million square feet of office, lab, and educational space on more than 330 acres, so quite a bit larger than some of the other ones that we're looking at. They have a number of residential units that are in process of being developed. The final one that I'm going to highlight is Destination Medical Center in Rochester, Minnesota. This one is, again, a newer one. This was started in 2013. This is really built around the Mayo Clinic. This is a $5.6 billion plan. It's the largest in Minnesota's history, and it's focused on health and wellness, but it's also focused on so it's a lot on health and wellness, and really focused on achieving the highest quality of patient, visitor, and community member experience. So a lot of placemaking activity is taking place on the front end of it. They do anticipate leveraging public investments to attract more than $5 billion in private investments to Rochester. They anticipate creating more than 30,000 new jobs with workforce development strategies that support that growth. So they've really focused on the workforce aspect of it as well. And then their projections are $7.5 to $8 billion in net new tax revenue over 35 years. So we highlight these because Mike's going to then focus on what we expect to be some of the goals and the outcomes here in Fort Worth.
So the first meeting that we had, we spent months just getting the invitation list together and finding the right people to involve and to start the discussion, and also get the word out that everybody is welcome. We need to know who from the different entities needs to be involved in this. So we had our first meeting at the beginning of October 2nd, and we wanted to go from the strategic plans, general goals and objectives, and their identification of the Medical Innovation District as a key goal, and start to define that further. And so the next step was to get consensus on some larger outcome goals. So we know what the end outcome should be that we're aiming for. And so we walked through these and reached consensus on all of these. And some of these are just straight from the strategic plan. So the first one is that top talent, when we're done, top talent will choose to launch careers and start new businesses in Fort Worth. We will be a magnet for the best minds in the country that are looking to launch new businesses or go to school. And they will choose Fort Worth, and they will choose to stay in Fort Worth after they are educated here. That we will be widely known as a world-class incubator for startups, and that whole ecosystem for the startup community will be here. It will support these fledgling businesses where they will be able to find the spaces, the investors, and a network of support that they need to thrive. We will be a national leader in applied medical education, and that will be the result of collaborations among all of the wonderful institutions that we have today, and with the introduction of the TCU UNT Health Science Center School of Medicine, some new players. So this slide shows these entities that many of which are partners with JPS and other major medical institutions. And what we're seeing from the School of Medicine with their proposed curriculum is that they will be even more ambitious in seeking partnerships with a full range of other practices and partners where students can get medical education that is applied medicine education throughout a variety of environments. That Fort Worth will be attracting millions in new research funding. And we heard from Dr. Stuart Flynn that the traditional approach of trying to seek funding through the National Institute of Health that will be part of his approach, but he will be also more active in seeking partnerships with corporate entities and other partners in Fort Worth. Those research initiatives should be tied directly to patient outcomes and put Fort Worth at the cutting edge of the application of the latest in procedures, devices, and medicines through clinical trials. That our major healthcare providers will grow stronger as they anticipate and adapt to changing trends, increased demand for services. Of course, we have an aging population, and we just heard the first presentation today had to do with new facilities here at JPS. An important day next Tuesday that will help shape the future of this campus and the network. All of the major medical entities are addressing that increase in demand and the changes in healthcare delivery. So we want those to be able to thrive. We want for this medical innovation district to be unique among its peers because it's a combination of these places to work, places to be educated, and places to live and have the highest quality of life among any medical innovation district in the country. And that's where we see the true connection between these economic anchors and all of the activity that's going on and the place that is being created in the Near South Side. I passed out copies of our annual progress report. That's the best way to really get a glimpse of all of the progress that's been made. And in that last section, continuing progress, those are blurbs for all of the projects that are in the works, many of which you see under construction, but there are many more that haven't even started. So Fort Worth is unique in that the medical district is interwoven with that neighborhood vitality, and that is a competitive advantage that we have. We see it on Magnolia, and we are starting to see it on South Main, in South Main Village, where we've got buildings being renovated and public spaces being created. Those public spaces are more than just places to have events. Those are the spaces, and it can be coffee shops, it can be parks. These are the places where we have that easy interaction and sharing of ideas, where people just, without really planning on it, they become acquainted with one another. There's a strong sense of community and a strong sense of sharing ideas that can lead to new business and new economic activity. We will have an intentional approach to foster opportunities for all. So we see in other cities that the focus has been so much on attracting the creative class, and cities like, or areas like Silicon Valley, sort of the most well-known example, tremendous amount of economic activity, and yet the highest housing prices in the country, and not opportunity for everyone to find a job and work within the same area. We want to learn from that. We want to learn from authors like Richard Florida, who was one of the cheerleaders of that creative class initiative when he wrote his first book, The Rise of the Creative Class. His most recent book, The New Urban Crisis, really focuses on how important it is from the beginning of an effort like this to be thinking of an inclusive approach where we're working with all partners to provide housing choices and to provide economic opportunity for that full spectrum of workers and residents. That's critically important. And finally, if we are successful, today we have aviation and energy as really the top two economic engines. What a lot of people don't know is that healthcare is right there. We have the largest concentration of healthcare jobs in the entire region here in the Near South Side. And through this effort, we want for the medical sector and medical innovation to join aviation and energy among those top sectors for Fort Worth. So those are the big goals. What we'll do from now on, from here forward, is we will really focus on specific strategies that we can take starting today and going into the future. Maybe this is a 20, 30-year effort, as Brenda said. But we will begin to focus on those specific strategies. There are some that we know we can do better now. We can start telling our story. We have an amazing concentration of activity and players today. We already have, in some people's minds, whether they're in Oklahoma City or other cities, an innovation district here. We can begin telling that story. We need lab space for startup healthcare entrepreneurs. We hear that all the time through partnerships, perhaps with JPS and other partners. We can have these new facilities that meet those needs and help us create this type of medical innovation district. Our next meeting, so meeting number 2 of this group, will be on Tuesday, November 13th. Any of you that are interested, please, you can send me an email or go through Scott, and we can make sure that we have everybody on the list. We're honored to be working with Robert and Scott and the incredible team here at JPS, and you guys are definitely key players moving forward.
So that's the neighborhood in which the JPS main campus sits. And, we hope it inspires your imagination and provides you some perspective and context as you deliberate on what opportunities JPS might consider. Are there any questions?
Yeah, I have a question and a couple of comments. One is, I think that's awesome, and as we look at when we get the news next Wednesday that the bond has passed, that's the best way to look. Yes, sir. You see a major plus for this area, but that concept I think is awesome. And my question is, do you see the innovation district may be medical, but this concept moving eastward and west, the Como area, the west area, and moving all the way to Texas Western and past Texas Western?
First, Mike, you might want to describe the boundaries of the TIF and the near south side.
Okay, if you flip to the back page of this report, the shaded area represents what we call the near south side. And you can see
where are you?
The last page. So you can see the boundaries of the area where we're focused, and in the red dashed line, that's the boundary of the TIF. And you can see that it goes east of 35 a few blocks, and that's where we work hand in hand with Southeast Fort Worth, Inc. Now, this is the near south side. This is where we have the highest concentration of these medical facilities. This is also an effort that, from the beginning, we're saying has porous boundaries. We're using that phrase because we know that UNT Health Science Center is on the west side, closer to Como, closer to other neighborhoods that have seen some revitalization. Others have great opportunity. We think that the partnerships between organizations that are located here and outside is going to continue and become even stronger. What we also feel is important, though, is that if we're going to create the type of place where the workers in these companies want to live, want to work, and where we have that synergy among different sectors and different businesses, that placemaking and sense of community is really important. So that's why there's a geographic focus to this at the same time that we're saying it's not exclusive to these defined boundaries.
Other questions?
Mike, you guys, I'm sure you do, monitor from a housing standpoint because sometimes the industry is ahead of itself and sometimes the industry is behind itself.
Right.
And then sometimes when the industry is behind, it will overcompensate and provide more housing than is needed, and then you have a saturation point. Where is that in the medical district from a housing standpoint, from your temperature gauge on that issue?
We're confident that we started this most recent construction boom at a significant deficit when it comes to housing within our area. We've seen all of the new apartments that have been finished have been filled. There are a lot that are under construction, and in the back section of this report, there are about 2,300 units that have not yet been completed. So that is where we start to ask the same question that you asked, Robert, is where's the saturation point? I look at it optimistically because we've had success in filling the projects that are completed. The demand and just the level of awareness for the near south side continues to just go up and up. Having Magnolia is selected as one of the great places in America by the APA is, validation that, all right, this is a regional destination now. This is where people want to be. If we're overbuilding a little bit, or even a significant amount, the upside, the positive outcome to that, if there is one, is that there is some downward pressure on rents. And what we are seeing now is that the housing that's being delivered, the developers are getting rents that are comparable to downtown and West 7th and Clear Fork, and it's pricing out a lot of the workforce that's here. And so we're really reliant on those affordable housing projects like the Katy Lofts, that last slide that I showed when I was talking about the creative class. That's a partnership that's going to deliver about 120 workforce housing units that are income restricted to those that are making 60% of the median income. There's another project next to Mistletoe. That's not going to meet the demand for that middle section of workers. So I think with supply and some downward pressure, I think the outcome's going to be good.
Tell us from the education of the board members and even the community and watching live stream, give us an idea of the future of the TIF and the role that the TIF plays, and
yes.
whether the maturity of that TIF has hit its maturity level and it will not be here, or the TIF actually can be a significant economic tool to a lot of what will be happening. I think some of the board members would appreciate hearing the TIF forecast.
Okay, so the TIF, the Tax Increment Finance District number 4, was created in 1997. It's a 25-year TIF. It expires in 4 years, expires in 2022. Now, the tax value within that red boundary that I showed you on the map, when we created the TIF, was about $230 million. That was the taxable value of all the property within that boundary. It is now $850 million, so it's more than tripled. So the good news is that there's a lot of increment being generated that stays in the TIF that has to go towards investment in infrastructure within that boundary. The good news for taxing entities like the hospital district is that in 4 years, all of that revenue will be hitting your general fund. But for the next 4 years, we need to be strategic in how we utilize those TIF dollars to do a combination of infrastructure repair work like we're doing. You'll see a lot of streets being reconstructed in the South Side. A lot of that is funded through partnerships with the TIF and the city and some private partners. So we have to continue that work so that when the TIF is finished, we're delivering to the city and all the taxing entities a district that isn't going to become a fiscal burden, just bringing our infrastructure back up to where it should be. So that's one challenge. The other challenge is delivering developments and projects that the market's not going to deliver on itself. So public spaces. We've been working to find property, design, and now construct parks. And so you'll see in South Main Village, we're working on a couple. Fire Station Park, just at the western edge of your campus, will be expanded by an acre. So those are two efforts. And then the third is the housing. So if we are going to create housing options for that full spectrum, then there are TIF partnerships with private developers that can help make that happen. So we got 4 years to fully utilize that. It's been a tremendous tool in the success that we've seen so far, and clearly has accelerated the amount of investment and the increase in property values.
I will remind the board members, and Steve as a new board member, that Near Southside has been a good partner to us, but they also were significantly beneficial to us when we were trying to figure out the dollars for the demolition of the old St. Joe's Hospital. And the TIF came in and helped us significantly with our ability to do that. And that was a huge plus for us, because that was a difficult challenge for us to be able to do it. And it just seems that it's not very appropriate to just tear half the building down.
No.
So for the fact that you all helped us get to that point, we're greatly appreciative. The other thing, Mr. Chair, that I wanted to do is have Melissa Acosta raise her hand. Melissa, if you'd stand up for a quick second, let board members, I'll remind you that Melissa is part of our research team. And what Melissa does is she works with Scott and a few others by attending this, because the research element of this, and it's not just bringing the actual medical research, it's bringing in the firms. It's looking at innovative ways by which you start incubators, and innovative ways by which we can ultimately see significant benefit to our patients from that. Melissa is a part of this, and I love that research arm element to this, because it's a different model for JPS. When you say research, it may conjure up one thought that you might have, but Melissa and her team are doing a whole lot from an innovative standpoint to try to figure out how we enhance the care for our patients and actually bring jobs to Fort Worth. So, Brenda, we're trying to help you in the city in that regard, because we know what we can do in a partnership to help our patients. So, Melissa, thank you for your efforts, and thank you for attending those meetings with Scott. I think you hold him at bay there, and I think that's good.
Other questions? I think it's a great opportunity. As you all know, JPS has invested a gigantic amount of money over the last 2 years in terms of property acquisition that falls in line with many of your objectives. So I would continue to encourage you to use JPS resources throughout this process. As you look at medical innovation districts, it's a great opportunity. What it doesn't necessarily bring to the table in and of itself is new bonding sources and new revenues, unless those revenues are being generated from the effort, as opposed to some districts where they're actually allowed to go out there and issue debt. This is not one of those. So this has to be a partnership where you take advantage of resources that the public sector brings to bear. JPS has a gigantic stake in residents in housing in this area for a number of reasons. And we spent a lot of time over the last year thinking through what that dynamic looks like. But you're aware that our residency programs are among the largest in the nation. Our family practice is the largest in the nation. So we want to stay involved with you. We like to continue to invite you back to keep us up to speed. Scott does a great job of keeping us informed. Some of us work in this space ourselves, and so we're very interested in being informed about what we can do. We're also looking for new partnership opportunities. Good. And one of the efforts that will begin after a certain event in November is going to be a much more aggressive effort relative to how partnerships can benefit JPS and our patients over the next 20 years. And so the capital involvement, the planning talent, the incredible resource that we have here through our residency programs really represents something that will be a gigantic infusion of capital into this district. So we applaud your efforts. We appreciate you being here. We want to stay in touch. We want to continue to hear from you. Opportunities that we get to give you feedback about where JPS is headed, we like to share those with you. So appreciate you being here.
And to Mr. Petty's comment, don't be shy. We have day jobs here, and the 1.2 million patient encounters we have sometimes consume us. Yes. But you all don't hesitate to call us and say, because quite frankly, no disrespect to our colleagues in the industry, you will see JPS in the next coming years in a new approach, because this hospital has always been what's coming through our front door and how do we take care of it. That mission now has to be subsidized by ways that we look at new approaches to dealing with the industry. And I think JPS has a lot to offer, but it's new for us. So some of our colleagues have been in this business for a while. For us, it will be different. So I don't want you all at the city level or at near South Side to think for a second, one, not to contact us and not to present us with, not to give us an edge over anybody else, but present us with anything, because this is going to be new for this board. It's going to be new for all of us as we begin to discuss things that we've never discussed before. And I think also JPS is in a very positive position. To Mr. Petty's point, the 6.5 contiguous acres that we own on Main Street is probably in the best spot to link downtown Fort Worth to the medical district than any place else. And to the close proximity to Cook and Baylor and THR and HCA facility, it's wonderful. And what we don't want to do is just merely expand JPS's main campus to there, because as I mentioned numerous times, if any new funds come into JPS, we will leverage those dollars. We can't continue just to build what we got. It will not allow us to exist for the next 110 years. So we've got to work on partnerships we've never discussed before, things we've never done before. So this presentation today is critically important, and the fact that you all want to work with us is an invitation from us that says, please let us continue that and help us get to that point.
Excellent. You have our commitment to work hand in hand from here moving forward. And in fact, I've spoken with Scott about trying to get you on the agenda for either the next meeting or an upcoming meeting where we like to have an update from one of the key partners, and the timing would be perfect. If there's good news, as we expect on Tuesday, then I think that the opportunities presented by the bond program and all of the partnerships that could come out of that, I think the timing is right to start working hand in hand now.
Look forward to it, and I'll be delighted to do that and be happy to be there and let that community know the new approach at JPS, the innovative approach of this board, because I think with the people that you now currently have on this board, you've got a really bought-in process to knowing that we have not only an obligation to our patients to do it, we now have an ability with the land that we have and the places we have. As mentioned earlier, you wouldn't have come to us 10 years ago with this concept, and it just wasn't in the minds of people. And we've watched the local sale of land go from X amount to X amount to X amount to X amount. And we're not only excited by that, but we've also seen what it means to our employees. The reason I asked you the housing question, which I think is curious, is because a lot of people that work here don't live here, but if given the opportunity, they might really want to do that. And we have such a diversity of people that work in this place, from somebody who's 23 years old and single to somebody who has, are closer to a retirement basis and want to do something with JPS. We have all different spectrums. So from a housing standpoint, if we offer more opportunities to folks, I'm not sure you're going to hit that mark where we don't have it, particularly when you look at our residents who want to wake up in their scrub jammies and walk right across the street and go to work. That's a huge advantage for them, particularly since sleep is a commodity that they don't get as much as they would like. So if we don't have to give them a 20-minute drive, that makes a big difference. So we're excited, and we look forward to working with you guys. I'll stop my oration because I get a little excited about this, because I think JPS is right in the right place.
Excellent. Yep. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you very much.
Happy to have you back. Thanks, Scott, for bringing this to us. Great opportunity there. It's a neat program and neat presentation. I'm glad we had that before us today. Thank you, sir. All righty. Angie, we have your construction project report. Charlie, you can come up here at the big table if you want to.
Okay, I'm back. So if you've got this in your board portal, we've already talked about the ED shell space, so I'll skip over that one. If you'll remember, we came to y'all with our radiology equipment, the installs, construction required for that. We have all the smaller pieces done, and now we're at the MRI, which will be our third MRI here. We're waiting on some long lead mechanical equipment. We're expecting that to come in shortly in December, and then we'll get onto that and get that finished. So hopefully the next time I'm reporting, we'll be right in the middle of that. The next one is the Cancer Center, and if we can go to the next slide, I actually wanted to show y'all some pictures. This is 1450 8th Avenue, and what I really wanted to show was just the different, we have major, moderate, and minor construction. This project has all three. So this is major. That's actually going to be the infusion area, and if you remember, we're doubling the size of our infusion, so we're going from the 16 to 30, 31 chairs, and no patients in that picture. Those are all workers. So,
Good information.
So they're in there just building away. And if we can go to the next slide. Next slide, please. They're helping me here. This is the back hallway. The linear accelerators will be located off this off this corridor. That is a pretty good example of just some moderate construction. The floor, wasn't great. We've got some wall protection up there. We're just doing a little bit of construction in that area. And so the next slide, which I'm excited about, this is the linear accelerator room. That room is great already. It's got all the millwork against the wall there that's pretty new. The floors are good. That circle in the floor, that's where the linear accelerator will be mounted. And it's hard to tell in that picture. There's a little bit of white on the wall. We'll be in there doing some painting. But other than that, just very, very minor construction, so that's really good for us. The linear accelerator is our critical path. The PO's been issued, so that thing's in production. Right now our schedule says we're going to open in April, May time period, and as long as that linear accelerator comes in, we will stick to that schedule. So that's exciting for us. The next slide, please. Yay. Everybody didn't get to see the Northeast Medical Home, which we, opened for business on October 1st, so a month ago. But I did want to bring some pictures, so if you weren't there, you'd get to see it. This is outside, and you'll see the JPS logo colors there represented. That's the front. If we can go to the next slide. That's the front registration. The little lower part, for our ADA, very nice, clean, modern look. That's a very nice clinic. If you haven't been there, I encourage you to go visit. The next slide, just one of the little waiting pods. And if you look on the wall, that's some of the, we call that community artwork because it brings in some of the stuff from the community, and nice chairs, everything vinyl. It can be wiped down, just really nice. Next slide, please. This is a typical exam room. Hard surface. We don't put the plastic laminate anywhere anymore. There's water. But just a very nice, clean room. Next slide. Pharmacy. So that's a really nice pharmacy. Now, when we were out there for the grand opening, that was on the 11th, they told us that they're seeing about 30% of their pharmacy pickups are through the drive-through. So that was really, that's really exciting. And I would assume that they'll just get even better. But that's a nice pharmacy there. So next picture. That's a little hard to see on the big screen, but some of the wayfinding there, optometry is yellow, and you go to education next is blue. Your behavioral down there is green, and then dental's on the left purple. The benches outside match those colors. Very easy to find, and it's hard to tell, but they all light up. So it's really nice. All the ancillary services down the one corridor, nice and wide, and very nice and pretty.
So if you can't see that, there's folks out there that can help you see that.
Yeah.
And
Yes, sir?
was those colors out there?
They were. We just had such a good turnout out there that you just probably didn't notice them. There were people everywhere. But you'll see, it's on, the stripe is on the floor also.
I must have been walking side by side with Robert.
You probably were. You probably were.
I don't see any of them now, but I understand they're not.
Yeah, so that's the main concourse, and dental down there and behavioral health on the end. Our patients can park in the back, and there's an entry back there, so they don't have to walk through the whole building if that's the only place they're going.
That behavioral health area is awesome.
It is. Very nice. Thank you.
Just tell me quickly, tell me what that behavioral health space can do relative to patients that come in and conditions they encounter.
Mm-hmm. So what we have in there is the partial hospitalization program where they come and spend, 8 hours if they're, the way I understand it, and y'all just forgive me because I'm not a medical person or a psychologist, but if they're not bad enough to be inpatient in the hospital, but they're not quite good enough to come for a monthly visit, they can come, they spend 8 hours a day there, they get counseling, there's a group room, they have a lunch room, and then beyond that there are the individual offices for the doctors where they're going to see the patients one-on-one. So I wish Zelia was here because she can talk on this forever, but that is what they're doing out there.
So would an emergent care patient be able to be treated there or not?
You're asking me something I do not know.
An emergent care patient might show up there but be transferred here immediately. But the great luxury of that is even though you couldn't maintain the care, you could at least segregate them out. And with our other facilities, you got clinics that you couldn't put an individual like that just to even wait for somebody to transport.
That was kind of where I was headed. We don't have the capacity to.
No, now you've got at least the ability to segregate them from the rest of the population, which is
those would be some of those is they are not ready to go to the emergency room, but they know they need some help, and so they would be able to go there, get some of the counseling, kind of help them to not come to the crisis center.
I'll be really interested to see how that space functions and what we learn from that space over the next couple of years.
Yeah,
And you'll remember, I'm sorry, Reverend, go ahead.
They had some machines there. I can't remember the name of the machines because they carried a tour through and kind of carried us through it. That they can do some tests there now where they don't have to come here. Yeah, it was really a plus. Really nice.
Yes, they do. The other part that I'll remind you, and I know y'all know this, but we were able to give up a lease for that. We had a lease space for that PHP, so we no longer have to pay for that lease space. It's done and over with, so that was really good for us. Yeah, that's just a really nice clinic. I'm proud of it. I'm proud of my team. They did an excellent job. We opened on time and under budget, so that was good news.
Well, congratulations. I was unfortunately not able to be there. I'd planned something months ahead of that, but the reports were awesome, and
Good.
I cannot wait to take a tour.
I want to, you bet, and I've got that, we'll get that set up. I want to thank J.R. Labby, too, because they asked me to make comments there, and every picture that was taken, I'm standing on a big sign that says behavioral. And so I want to thank J.R. for allowing me to be behavioral under every comment I made. That's perfect.
Mr. Powell, our chairman of the board, is back there on the back row.
Yeah.
That's funny.
DT was there also, so I appreciate it's a good ways out there, and it's a great facility, and Angie will not take credit for this. Trent and I have worked with the mayor of Euless for many years, Linda Martin. She's a dear friend, and I made the comment there to Linda that day that they said JPS staff was one of the easiest and best they've ever worked with. So when Angie didn't want to sit there and take credit for all they did and their staff on time, all those good things. So Angie, you and your staff, and yes, Robert, you just hit on it. Happy State Bank, I think under Lord Robert Precious, JR, and JR's team, as always, did a great job. But if you haven't seen it, you got a lot of pride in it. Go by and see it. It's a great facility. So,
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate it. And Angie, you and your team for all the work that you all have done. That's it just doesn't seem like it's possible that it was 9 years ago we started talking about that facility. So,
and we didn't have to go to court to build it.
That's exactly right.
The other thing I will remind you of, two things I want to mention. One is we do own the 6 acres that sits right next to that. If y'all recall, we made a deliberate decision to buy the full 11 acres that sat on. We could have bought a portion of it, but you all made the wise decision because you may see ancillary services that go out there that connect with JPS, or you may see a JPS expansion that goes out there. You were very smart in your future planning. The other thing is when the leadership of Angie is amazing, and we knew that here, and Lou Mattingly is part of that team, and Lou does a really good job, and Angie has the strength of Angie is also the strength of the incredible people that she has around her, and Lou and Casey and the rest of them down there in that department do an incredible job. You can't pull that off without a team, and that's our internal team. That's no disrespect to anybody who does work outside of here because they do great work too, but our team does an incredible job, and they pulled that off. The picture we don't have in here is it the west wing? It's the wing where we have the pediatric side, and we have room for children and an area that you can kind of play and those kind of things. So you've got some really nice things. To Trent's point is this is quite an advancement for us, and it is going to be a learning tool for us when we use this as the model of improvement or standard for what we do when we look at 4 other clinics or 6 other clinics in the future. But the nice thing about this clinic, when you go out there and walk through it, is the flow. And when you're in old hospital that was built in 1947 and you're trying to retrofit patient care in there, you just go a long way when you have a facility like this in administering to your patients. So a lot of credit to a lot of folks, and even though it took 9 years, you came out with one heck of a good product at the end of that. And had we done it 9 years ago, we probably wouldn't have had the good product that we have today. We would have had 3 politicians even happier with us if it were 9 years ago when we did it, but we probably wouldn't have the good facility we have now.
Man, what I thought was interesting when I got out there, and I think Angie and I were one of the first 2 out there, people were lined up to be served.
Wow.
We said, no, not today, not today.
Man, that's amazing. Well, all you had to do was go through the old clinic in that area on Brown Trail and see what the service level was, and you compare that to what's there today, and it's a whole different plant. It truly is. So
True.
I interrupted you, Angie, but
no,
thank you
you're
very
fine.
much.
We're
for
about
the
ready to
update.
do our
Appreciate it.
30-day post-occupancy survey and see what lessons learned to see what we're going to do with the next one. So that's really good. My final project on here today is the behavioral health, environmental safety. And while you think that would be over because, Joint Commission, no findings for ligature risk. Oh, look at that. We had more pictures. I apologize. If you want to, that's the internal nurses station. And just the nice shot of, see the architectural detail with the wood look on the ceiling. And that goes down to a little huddle room. And when those doors shut, it's that 3-form product that you can see through, so it kind of looks like stained glass, and it just really gives the staff feel good,
Architects did a nice job.
Derek, do we have another slide? I'm just checking. There, okay, good deal. So on behavioral health, we're about to the end of that project. What we have left are patient room toilets. We have to replace those with non-ligature toilets. And the patient room door alarms, we waited on those. We already had them on the patient room bathrooms because that's a higher risk area. So now we've moved out to the patient room door alarms, so we'll finish that. There's a little bit of a spread in our budget there, but when we budgeted this back, if y'all remember when Wayne Young was here, we had a lot more work in this project because we thought we were going to have to redo that whole Tower 3, and it was very fluid at that time. CMS and Joint Commission were still talking about what the requirements were going to be for ligature risk. And fortunately, we didn't have to do the very large part of that project, so we're coming in way under on that one.
So Sharon's happy too. So even
Yeah,
better.
I just think it's a win.
Fantastic.
Okay, any questions?
Any questions for Angie? All right, that doesn't require a vote, but we appreciate the update
Thank you.
on that, Angie, very much. I don't think we have anything for executive session.
We do not have an executive session.
Okay. Anything else from the committee?
Scott, that's it, correct?
Thank you all for being here. We appreciate it. We'll consider ourselves adjourned at 4:42.